guess what? I got a fever.
Fever in the morning, a fever all through the night. Another Saturday night.
Saturday night.
Get ready for a Saturday night.
Louder!
Okay, folks, welcome to episode 85 of Dynasty Fever, but also episode 44 of Dynasty Saturday Night Five. For Dynasty Fever fans, if you're paying attention, it is the Wesley Walker episode 85. We're big in Iceland. Wesley Walker, 85 in the 1980s, played for the Jets. We are big in Iceland. We're going to get Dynasty Saturday Night Five some exposure in Iceland as well. Please subscribe, rate, and review to everything. What you're looking at here on the screen is the collab of the century. It is Dynasty Fever X Dynasty Saturday Night Five. I've brought together people from both of the podcasts that I do. It's kind of that feeling when you have friends from different circles of your life and you hope shit doesn't go wrong. My co-hosts, Jesse Schneeman from Dynasty Fever, and of course, Josh Walker from Dynasty Saturday Night Five. Jesse, how you doing?
I'm amazing, and it's the Albert Boface episode. If you're an Eagles fan.
Oh, he's 85. Okay.
Yes, he is.
Right.
Yes, he is. Nay Brown. Oh, and Art Monk back in the short time that he played for the Eagles.
He was on Washington for a while, right?
Well, that's who he played for most of his career, but towards the end, he was with us for, I think, 1 or 2 years.
Josh, any Notre Dame 85s worth pointing out? Oh, or Atlanta Falcon 85s that you'd like to point out from over the years?
None that really just jump out at me. A lot of Notre Dame's big players have smaller numbers, like 5, 9. So Kyle Rudolph and all them were. Oh, actually, Tyler Eifert, I think, was 85. So Tyler Eifert is one of my favorite tight ends. Neck injuries crush his career, but
yeah, it
was pretty good.
Well, Josh, of course, unfortunately, is a Notre Dame fan, as some of you know. So what are we doing here? Well, what we're going to do is basically have our season wrap episode for both shows together. We've had some funky schedules. Life has gotten lifey. Josh had to be with family this weekend, so we had to pre-record. Jesse and I wanted to squeeze in an episode before the holidays because we haven't done one in like 4 weeks. And so I figured, you know what, let's bring the people I love together around one holiday table and talk about the feast that was Dynasty Fantasy Football 2023. If you're on Going for Two and watching, I got to pay the bills. So go to Underdog Fantasy, use the promo code GF2 if you're a new account and deposit, and you'll get a deposit match up to $100. I'm done with all my best ball. I'm eliminated, so from Best Ball Mania. So I, withdrew my money. I'm just gonna go hang out for the rest of the offseason.
What's a? I happened to read the show sheet, and you had a longer promo in there. What's a battle royale?
Oh, so that's like week to week. They kind of have like this Best Ball DFS hybrid kind of thing. Yeah, and that's like battle royale and like goal line stand and the doink and fun little names. Yeah.
Gotcha. I haven't done one. I think it's like 6 or 8 player drafts where you just like draft from the slate that day and it's best ball scoring. So I think it's just weekly best ball.
Weekly best ball. Oh, that's pretty fun.
Yeah.
All right. So what we're gonna do is kind of break this up into 2-ish parts, something like that, kind of like a reboot of the Dyno Awards that Josh and I were going to do for Dynasty Saturday Night Five, and then also kind of like a big picture NFL, how's that shaping up fantasy football thing that we were going to do with Dynasty Fever, but kind of just mash it all up together. So let's start with the awards. The second annual Dyno Awards. Cue music. Yeah. Oh, that reminds me of, hold on, is this going to work? All right. It's the Dyno Award.
That actually reminds me, quick story if you don't mind.
Yeah.
The wife and I were at downtown Balmer last weekend, just celebrating the holidays and bouncing from place to place. And Baltimore has this thing. It's actually 34th Street in Baltimore, and every house just goes crazy with the lights, and just you can tour through some of the houses. It's just a really cool thing. So we're sitting in the bar after that. McGurk's is a Philly bar in Baltimore. And a guy walks in the door behind me and does that as he walks in. Like the air horn with his mouth. And he just kind of put his hands up like I'm here. And it was pretty cool.
So I would be the type of person that would move in on 34th Street just to be the house that doesn't do the lights.
Wow. What a Grinch.
Scrooge,
What a
yeah.
Grinch.
So I actually have a funny story about air horns too. I downloaded an app to kind of troll my wife with, and she made me uninstall it because I just overused it. Everyday situations, terrible situations to use it. So it's a fun app to have on your phone. But
Yeah,
That's awesome. I don't think that would last a full day with my wife, so I'm not going to try.
Oh boy. So Josh, let's kick us off with biggest riser or pleasant surprise. And then what we'll do is you'll do yours, I'll do mine, and then like Jesse will tell us like what he thinks and why we're both wrong. How about that?
cool. Yeah, so this is the second year of the Dinos. I can't help but think we finally made it to like the Dundee Awards level. I don't know if y'all watch The Office or Michael Scott, but it feels like I'm at Chili's right now, going to present some awards. So yeah, biggest riser. I'll start. I had 4 nominees for this one. First one's pretty obvious. Puka Nacua. Wasn't super high on him coming in, but he's done really well. Tank Dell, Kyron Williams, and then Tajay Spears, who I'm actually really happy about. So out of those 4, I think I'm going to go Tank Dell. Just because I was already higher on him on the Hot Takes episode, I said that he would be the best receiver on the Texans. I didn't think that would come true, and I still don't know if it is. But he's well exceeded the expectations he had. I got him a lot at the end of the 4th rounds in some rookie drafts. So if you drafted him late in the rookie draft, you're doing really well. So I'm going to go Tank Dell.
All right, my nominees are Tank Dell, Puka, Purdy. I kind of have to put him there because I was down on him, and I have him pretty much as a top 12 or 13 quarterback now. Do I think he's buoyed by the scheme? Yeah. I mean, but I also think CJ Stroud is buoyed by the scheme. But you've got to be a good driver of that ship for that ship to go well, and he's a good driver. And like I can't stop it anymore. I'm Purdy pilled. I might as well just go with the story of the Mr. Irrelevant becoming a Super Bowl quarterback and ride the fun. Howell was interesting there for a while. Honorable mention to surprise running backs like Kyron Pacheco, Chandler, Jerome Ford, Raheem Mostert. But my winner of the riser is Tank Dell. I chose him because I had him at wide receiver 94 shortly before the season started. I thought like we're basically looking at like maybe a little bit better version of Tutu Atwell by next year, and I was super wrong. I knew he could separate. I just didn't think that at that size it was going to translate. I was super wrong. Tank Dell is the biggest riser.
Well, you guys are right about Texans, right? But you got the wrong Texans wide receiver. It's actually Nico Collins. Nico was actually. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I got something for Nico later. I saved him for another one.
Well, if I'm going to say riser, right, I sort of feel like we should exclude rookies because especially those 2 that just burst on the scene. You know, that's just like they started at a high level, right? If you're saying riser and dynasty value, I understand that makes sense. But riser as far as like cachet or profile, I definitely have to go Nico. You know, he was already there. So he was already at a base level and then rose, right? And then also I just think he's the alpha in that offense. He started to show it even before Tank went down. Tank is an excellent receiver. Don't get me wrong. I've got my 3 shares and I'm holding on to them dearly. They're not going for anyone. Someone just offered me Addison for Tank Dell in a second and I turned him down. So that's what I think of Tank Dell. But as much as I think of Tank Dell, Nico Collins, man, I'm telling you, he's just got wide receiver 1 written all over him.
I mean, I'm sorry, go ahead.
He's the best version of what we want T. Higgins to be.
Yeah. I love Nico. And I think we're going to be talking a lot about the Texans at some point tonight and just how well that's developed there with that offensive coordinator. The thing that I don't want to say worry about with Nico, but I think Tank, has a more versatility of like where and how he kind of wins that I think is conducive to that offense. I think there are games where Nico out on the boundary or intermediate in breaking routes, like under uncertain matchups, will kind of be canceled out. And I think Tank Dell is almost like matchup proof, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
He had his duds. He had a few duds this year.
Yeah. All right. So biggest faller or disappointment, Josh?
Yeah. So my nominees, start with Austin Eckler. Then one of my players that I was highest on, Rashad Penny, Damian Pierce, and then Kenny Pickett. So we got 3 out of 4 running backs here. That's the sign of things to come, which we'll talk about later. So out of these, though, I'm going to have to go with Austin Eckler, just because coming into the year, I had him still as a top 10 dynasty running back. And now I'm just afraid he's going to be relegated to a third down role where he's just out there catching passes, kind of like a James White type player, which still has some value, but I just, given his age, he battling injuries doesn't look like he used to. I still think he's a fine player, but he's definitely took the biggest fall. I got him down near like in the RB30 range, somewhere around there now. So I'm going to go with Austin Eckler.
All right. For me, my nominees for biggest faller or disappointment, Tank Bigsby. I thought he was going to have a better share of the backfield. I didn't think he was going to be like the 1A, but I definitely thought a solid 1B. He has been a bit disappointment. I'm still high on him, but, it is what it is. J-Mo, same story, still high on him, but it's like he's shown the flashes. The coaches like him more. He's running more routes. He's getting more touches. But in that offense, he is just not, it's Amon-Ra, it's Laporta, it's Gibbs, it's Monty for Monty touches. And it's really hard for him to work in there, although I hope that improves. Mac Jones, we thought he'd finally get an offensive coordinator and be fine. That didn't work out. Miles Sanders just turned into dust. Jahan Dotson, I love Dotson, but he is just nowhere this year. Honorable mention is expensive tight ends. We're going to probably talk about it a little bit later, but I think a lot of us are a lot hornier for guys like McBride, Kincaid, and Laporta than we are for some of the other, guys that have been at the top of the list for a while, like Kelsey and maybe Andrews and maybe Pitts, My winner, though, because I was such a Tank Bigsby backer, is going to be Tank Bigsby, just because I have to eat shit on that one. I was joking that, with some people about it and kind of overplayed it. I never thought that like Tank Bigsby was going to overtake Etienne, but I thought he was going to get some receiving work, some goal line work, some short yardage work, and work his way in there where it would be, fantasy relevant for both running backs. And it just hasn't been like that. And so I was way wrong. So he's going to be my winner as far as the fallers go. So 2 tanks so far for me.
Right on. I think you guys nailed it pretty well. I had one briefly in my head. I should have just written it down because now it's gone. Welcome to my world. If I don't write it down, it doesn't exist. Yeah, again, Tank's a rookie. But, things seem to be a little too fast for him in the NFL. His stat line tends to be negative 0.2 or negative 2. Depending on whether he fumbles or not every week. So, it's a little rough for Tank. And I'm sorry, Josh, who was yours again?
Austin Eckler.
Austin Eckler. Yeah, unfortunately, that one was inevitable. Unfortunately, it does look like he's definitely lost his step. And yeah, I'm going to have to give it to you on Austin Eckler. Although there is one name I just remembered. I was just thinking of. There is one name, since you're talking about our excitement about young tight ends, for every Laporta, there is a Greg Dulcich. So let's not forget his value last offseason on DTC was a 20. Okay, so that's like Deontay Johnson, for example. So that's kind of a joke now. You can't get one of Deontay Johnson's socks for Greg Dulcich.
I'm a believer. I think Peyton will find a way to figure out how to use him.
The problem I have is that after 2 years of not being able to stay on the field and Peyton feeling the pressure, he's most likely going to bring somebody in and not depend on Dulcich. So now there's going to be added competition. I mean, I love the talent, and if he can get this stuff squared away, there's nothing that says he can't beat out whatever competition is brought in and carve himself a role. But as far as him being this young, bright, Laporta-esque star that we thought he was going to be, I think that ship may have sailed.
Gonna have to leave him some extra hamstrings under the tree.
Yeah, exactly.
So one
point,
get
him some silly string.
Yeah. So one point I want to make on Tank Bigsby. I wonder what would have been different if he didn't fumble those 2 times very early on, like in the first 2 games of the season, if they would have given him another chance. It seemed like after that, they just buried him. Because now Dearness Johnson's the next man up, it seems. And that's really not good if you drafted Tank Bigsby in the 2nd round.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I had so much Tank because I thought he was falling way too much, and so I don't know. We'll see. All right, next award, Jesse. By the way, how this works is we do the same 3, and then we have 2 wild card categories that we just make up. So yeah.
Okay.
So the next category of the 2nd annual Dyno Awards is the guy I'll have a lot of (parentheses hopefully) in 2024 is Josh. Kick us off.
All right, so my 4 nominees, I'm going to go with Justin Herbert. I have a feeling I have a few leagues where I'm a little light in quarterback. You can ask Jesse. I sent way too much for Josh Dobbs earlier. That didn't work out well. But yeah, I'll be getting Justin Herbert on a discount coming off an injury in a bad year. DJ Moore is my 2nd one. I moved him up to around wide receiver 15, 16 in Dynasty. Really like him, especially if Justin Fields stays, even though there is some uncertainty about that. And then Roschon Johnson, another Bear, still high on him. I like his usage this year. Kind of dealt with concussions, maybe another injury, but I think he's going to be the guy moving forward. And then Marvin Mims. Hopefully Sean Payton can start working to get him the ball, maybe move on from Jerry Jeudy, so he'll get a lot more looks. I really like him still. I think he's really underrated and should be a pretty good buy going into the offseason. For my winner, I think I'm going to go Marvin Mims. I really like his upside. I'm starting to try to invest in a lot more younger receivers, especially after seeing Nico break out in year 2 or 3. I think it was year 3. So younger receivers, I'm going to give them a break their first year or 2, and I'm buying in. So Marvin Mims is the guy I'm going to have a lot of.
So for me, some of this mathematically is just true because I'm overweight on them already, but Spears, Mims, Trey McBride, I've got a few shares. I was picking him up a lot in the mid-seconds in his rookie draft season, and so I'm going to try to add more. Trevor Lawrence, I think, there's going to be pockets where people would prefer guys like, say, Stroud or Herbert or Burrow, and he's going to kind of get squeezed in some leagues where he's a little bit more available. I think there's kind of this weird narrative about Lawrence isn't as good as we thought, so I'll probably have more of him. Hollywood, I'm thinking about too. I think, with another sort of just starting the year fresh, whether it's Kyler Murray or another quarterback, he's definitely someone who we've seen be targeted when he's on the field. So, he might be a lot of it's prayer yards. We'll see. My honorable mention are Myers and Mayer from the Raiders. I think both can see an uptick in value next year with a competent quarterback. My winner is, of course, Trey. Would you please rest your half erect penis on my shoulder so I can hug it like a giant worm, McBride?
Oh my God. Well, if it's anything like his wingspan, it's gonna be massive.
My mouth is watering. Yeah. So so we have who was your winner, Josh? I'm sorry.
Marvin Mims.
Mims and McBride as guys we'll have a lot of in 2024.
We finally found some meat that Brian will actually eat. So speaking of Herbert, you brought up Herbert earlier. I just kind of want to discuss him a little bit, if you guys don't mind.
Sure.
Obviously, the weapons didn't work out. They had Zay Flowers sitting there for him, and they took Quentin Johnson. And it's just been really ugly this year. The injury is a freak thing. So I personally don't think it should affect his value. And I do expect them to bring in new weapons. And I feel like the community is going to be down on Herbert and high on, say, like Anthony Richardson because of what Minshew's doing with that offense and having JT, and Pittman is looking like, I think he's probably going to be a dynasty wide receiver 1 in the community this offseason. So even though I don't necessarily see him that way, I have him more in the Ayuk, Devonta Smith kind of high-end wide receiver 2 tier. Could you pull off an AR for Herbert straight up, and would you?
I think my cop-out answer for both of those questions is depends on the league.
Sure. In your in your wonderful proverbial vacuum that you love to speak of. Brian.
So the ceiling is super high on Richardson. I think a much higher ceiling than Herbert. That said, I think the point of Herbert, I think the thesis around acquiring him is that you want to get him at some discount because there's like a stink on him in the organization right now, and he's out of sight, out of mind. I don't know if Richardson is that discount. You know what I mean? So, would I trade like Purdy in 2 seconds and something like that? Yeah, I would do that.
So you're saying you'd want something on top of Herbert to get to Richardson?
Not necessarily. I just don't know that that's a discount price. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're like, I don't know that that's a value. All
right. So that wasn't there in season, right? So before Herbert went down, nobody was taking an AR for Herbert. So
I think someone who wasn't a contender would have.
You're saying someone that wasn't a contender would have given Herbert for AR mid-season. I think you'd have. I mean, I tried, and like, I was kind of laughed at for that. So, like, I think the shine is definitely off Herbert, but when you say the ceiling is higher for AR, I completely disagree. Herbert has the ceiling of Dynasty QB1 overall. So if you put the right weapons and the right coach with him, he's got more arm talent than Anthony Richardson. He's got more touch, more accuracy, more anticipation. Anthony Richardson's got the rushing ability. So if you want to say maybe he fits the modern game a little better, fine. But Herbert's not exactly a statue. He can run a little bit too.
Yeah,
Josh, what say you?
I still have Herbert ranked as QB5, 1 behind Stroud and 3 ahead of Richardson. So I agree with you. I think Herbert's. Yeah, I think Herbert's a top 2. Like you said, he's up there with Mahomes for just pure arm talent, accuracy, being able to escape. When he has weapons, man, he's elite. I haven't seen anyone that good at that age in a while. So I love Justin Herbert. It's just unfortunate. And they did fire their GM, so maybe maybe someone new coming in will actually get him some good weapons.
And maybe I'm the mark because I'm letting the uncertainty and the stink, because okay, what if I give you AR for Herbert, right? And then, what you got is like a, super high ceiling rushing quarterback, can be Jalen Hurts-esque, right? And what I get is some guy who gets stuck with like a stupid coach and bad coordinator or something again. And it's like, it's the last 2 seasons, like all over again. I don't know. I have them 8 and 9, Herbert 8, Richardson 9, and a tier of 5 to 9. So I have them essentially equal. That particular transaction, I think, is a very interesting one.
Yeah. I'm going to try to get that done this offseason. You're right that just because there's going to be change in LA doesn't mean that it's going to be positive change. Yeah. But I think It just depends on what type of person you are. Some people fear change. I welcome it, and I always try to be like an optimist when it comes to that kind of thing.
Look, the only way it gets worse is if Arthur Smith gets fired and goes to the Chargers. If that doesn't happen, I think it's going to be better. So.
Oh my God.
And by the way, I'm sorry, Josh, Arthur Smith, I don't think he's going anywhere. Like,
no, stop. Don't say things like that.
We just lost to the worst team in the NFL and didn't even use your best players. Like, if this doesn't do it, then I literally have no hope. Like, this should
here's
be,
the other. I'm sorry, go on.
This should be what does it, man, I think.
Here's the other thing. I read this today that Arthur Blank worked with Arthur Smith on a 3-year plan to turn the team around, rebuild the team, and make the playoffs in the third year, and it didn't happen. Right. So with a man as powerful, with as much on the line as Arthur Blank, you kind of don't break promises.
Well, I mean, are they out of the playoffs? I mean, like, they slipped into second behind Tampa now, right? Like, they're still within striking distance in that division.
I think they're behind. I think they're third now.
Oh,
I think they pretty much got to win out because I know the Saints have been doing pretty good and the Bucks have been doing actually really well. So I can look it up real quick.
When Fox did the playoff picture the other day, Atlanta was not.
Yeah.
It's
funny,
actually, before the Eagles game.
Because as much bad stuff has been said about Arthur Smith, which I think is pretty much all of it accurate, Matt Waldman said something interesting the other day that, like, maybe he didn't say this in so many words, but sly like a fox, because he's saying to himself, why am I going to run Bijan, give Bijan 300 touches when we need a quarterback to win? We're not going this is like him benching Ritter yet again is evidence of, listen, I need a quarterback if you want this team to do well, and then I'll play Bijan. He's
had every opportunity to take a quarterback.
Yo, they made a whole statement how they weren't going to go after Lamar Jackson when that was a pretty good fit, and that in itself, I was like, we're screwed. If you're not even going to make an attempt to go get upgrade at quarterback when it's there,
I think they could have just taken Fields, right? And instead they took a tight end.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like that the rumor is that the Bears are going to trade Fields to the Falcons, which is a lot cheaper than what you would have had to have given up to get Lamar. So if the Falcons get like Justin Fields or Kirk Cousins in there, right? Like you might have Arthur Smith get another year because they might say, hey, you know what? Here's a quarterback, go win.
Again, if you're Arthur Blank, are you doubling down by bringing in another sort of mercurial, we don't know if this guy's going to succeed or not type of asset? So now you have a coach that you may not believe in and a quarterback that you're paying a lot of money to that you may not believe in and would have to pay a lot of money to very soon to re-sign. I'm not saying he won't do it. I'm just saying good businessmen usually don't just double down on bad ideas.
Yeah, I hope they go after someone like Slowick or Ben Johnson, or at least someone that's an offensive-minded coach, because the last 3 years you've used your first-round draft picks on skill position players, and they're not being used. I'll just say if Fields or Kirk Cousins go to the Falcons and Arthur Smith is there, I might kill myself.
Well, they're according to Tankathon, they would have the number 10 pick at the moment. So, I mean, that might put them in the range for Jalen Daniels.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with that.
It might put him in the range to make a real mistake with Bo Nix.
No.
Fun fact: Bo Nix played against Justin Herbert in college.
Wow, yeah,
that's how old Bo Nix is.
He's been around. Or, and I'm going to say this just because I'm a child and I love to say it, Michael Penix.
Yes, and Spencer Rattler is Stetson Bennett's father. But all right, so wild card categories. Josh, your wild card category is.
Yeah, my first one, I just went straight up with this one for Dynasty MVP. And one of these is just someone who saved my ass in 3 different leagues on random weeks. I'm going to start off with Jacoby Myers. He's been improved. He really hit a lull there once Aiden O'Connell first became quarterback, but I weirdly didn't need him, so he was on my bench. But every time I put him in to fill in on a bye or if someone got hurt, he did really well. He helped me win a lot of weeks, so he's on there. We go Dak Prescott. I went and traded for him in the not a going for two Dynasty League we have, and also 2 other leagues, and he's done really well. Nico Collins, like I said before, he's been a fantasy MVP for me because I have him in a lot of leagues. I've sat on him for 2 years, and it's paying off. And lastly, Trey McBride. He's my most rostered tight end, and actually I just moved him up to tight end 1 in Dynasty, so I'm going to go Trey McBride as Dynasty MVP for me. I didn't in startups. I went young with Laporta. What's the
Kincaid.
dude from Green Bay?
Musgrave.
Craft. Yeah, I had a lot of Musgrave, Laporta, Mayer, and McBride, and that worked out well. So, yeah, Trey McBride's going to be my fantasy MVP and new tight end 1. So,
All right. Let's see. This for me, actually, my category is different. It's still a wild card category. Jesse, do you want to say anything about Dynasty MVP before I?
Well, that's aggressive. Trey McBride, tight end 1, but I can't really argue with it. The guy's an absolute monster. I actually have him as tight end 3. But that's because Laporta, I think, is just smashing in a way that we have never seen. And I believe Kelsey will be healthier next year with a weapon or 2 to take coverage off of him, and we'll bounce back.
Okay.
yeah. That's if he doesn't marry Taylor Swift and retire into the sunset.
Hey, that could happen. I mean,
Dude, if I were him, like I know, like competitive nature and all that, but listen, man, like you're in your mid-30s, you're banged up, like you're now
She's a
like
billionaire.
you're a global super. You're in your State Farm commercials. You got the Taylors. Just go. Just
those Kelsey boys love to play, man. They don't want to retire. And if Travis retires, it's going to put more pressure on Jason to retire, and we don't want.
In his podcast, he already talked about how before the year started, he had his doubts because he was banged up and stuff. So he stayed healthy.
Yeah, well, I heard that he had to be talked back into coming back.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not been his same self this year either, by the way.
Yeah.
so my category is I rolled it over from last year, and that is I never thought I'd say it, but award nominees are. Will Levis can be a fine quarterback too in a super. Nominee number 2, I was very good at being more zen about trading this year. Number 3, are the elite QBs really worth it? Number 4, I didn't cut enough leagues this year. And number 5, Pitts and Fields may just be what they are at this point. And then, of course, honorable mention is I totally slept on Taysom Hill again, just because I fucking hate Taysom Hill so much. And the winner is this is like not really, I don't think, useful for the audience, but I was a lot more zen about trading this year. I didn't send as many DMs to Jesse about how I hate fantasy football. I'm quitting. People are stupid. Like now, maybe some of that is and I'm gonna be honest, the last 8 weeks have been real breakneck busy for me trying to stop a fucking genocide. So there's been maybe a little bit less attention paid, but yeah, no, I think I want to pat myself on the back for doing a really good job. But just kind of there's a lot of I could go on a 2-hour podcast about mental health and neurodivergence and all the things that play a role and why I get tied up that way and what I've done to prevent it this year. Besides trying to stop a genocide, but that's my winner. I tried to be more zen about trading this year. Yeah.
Literally, I think I got a 1,000-mile view DM from you instead of one of those the other day. Should I bring it up?
With the AFC NFC thing when I was a little 420.
Brian,
yeah. Please do.
Brian was a little tipsy. I was like, oh, all right. I think I read it when I first woke up too, and I was like, you're hitting me with this at 6 a.m., buddy.
Well, I hit you with it at 2 a.m. when I was on my couch doing things that I can't speak about on a family pro.
So folks used to be about how great the AFC is, but I'm taking San Francisco, Dallas, and Philly before any AFC team. But is part of that because they get beat up in the NFC, and the good AFC teams face better opponents. or are the AFC teams just closer to the pack because they're not as good? And I said, I don't know. This is what the playoffs are for.
The thing is, those three NFC teams are standing out, but like they're playing NFC teams to get there. That was the point I was making. And like the AFC seems down this year and closer packed together, but that's because maybe it's because they're beating each other up. So that 8-6 Bills team might be tougher, better, and more resilient than, I don't know, the Cowboys or Eagles. I don't know.
Yeah, I literally don't pay really any attention until the playoffs. That's
Same
when
here.
teams
I'm surprised I know some records, actually.
Yeah, no, I literally don't. I know the Eagles record and Dallas's record because I love one and hate the other. And otherwise, I don't know. I really don't. Once we get the playoff teams in and the playoff teams start playing, I think it sorts itself out and teams show who they really are.
All right, so the final wild card category, I believe Josh is making a reference to an app that had a short-lived popularity, maybe? I'm not sure. Please, Josh, go ahead.
That is part of it, but also, it's just talking about like wine and how things get better with age. So I'm going to go with the Vintage Vine Award. So it was a little shout out to Vine, but also mostly about how these guys just seem to get better with their age. So I'm going to start off with Mike Evans. He's already got 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns. Everybody wrote him off. Raheem Mostert leads the league in touchdowns. A lot of that is because of The Office, but he also still looks really good and has managed to stay healthy enough to play. And then third, we got Keenan Allen. He is dealing with an injury now, which does come with the age sometimes. But when he was playing, he was top 3 in wide receivers and fantasy. And then last one, Joe Flacco, the old man coming off the couch to save people's fantasy playoffs. He doesn't look great, but he looks better than what the Browns have had this year. He's getting the ball to his playmakers, especially David Njoku. I have a few David Njoku shares, so I'm really loving this. And out of these, I'm going to go Mike Evans. Like I said, he's got 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns. He's helped Baker kind of make somewhat of a resurgence and realize that he's not just terrible. Mike Evans, Vintage Vine Award.
All right.
One note on Mike Evans. He's never had under 1,000 yards in a season, even in high school.
Yep.
He's never not had 1,000-yard season. That means, and there's no injury years in there either.
Yeah.
Every single one.
You think he's a Hall of Famer because of that?
Yeah, I do. But I don't know what the standards are, to be honest with you, because I don't.
No, me either. But it should, because it's not like he doesn't get touchdowns those years either. He gets plenty of touchdowns.
Well, I think what I heard, and I don't really pay it, like the Baseball Hall of Fame is like a little more, I want to say simple, but like there's really recognizable numbers that we have, like 3,000 hits and 500 home runs and things like that. Yeah. That football doesn't really have. But apparently there's some kind of logjam at wide receiver, and it's harder to make the Hall of Fame as a wide receiver than any other position, and that Evans is going to get the reputation that like some baseball players get as like a longevity compiler and not like a guy who dominated at any point in his career. And so that might go against him. Question about Mostert. Might as well talk about it now. Do we buy that Mostert in this offense is going to be fantasy relevant again at like 32 years old next year?
Nope.
Not really.
I'm not buying it. If I have him on my roster and I can't get rid of him for a second,
I mean buying the story, not buying the player. Like this, like
no, yeah. Well, that I'm just kind of saying, like, no, right? I don't believe it, so I won't. Like, if I can sell him for a second, I will. Otherwise, I'm holding him. They'd be kind of crazy not to, lean more towards A-Chain, in my opinion, and just kind of transition him into being, but they'll both be there until one of them gets hurt.
That's what I'm saying. I think he'll be like a top 30, 36 running back in the league. But like Jesse said, a lot of leagues where I have him, if wasn't super competing or a top 3 team, I sold him for a second. And I'm happy with that, even though he's leading the league in touchdowns and like a top 5 running back. I don't trust it that much moving forward.
And it's absolutely insane that he has not gotten hurt, and especially in this year.
For sure, absolutely. All right, so my final award, wildcard award, is I rarely take a victory lap award. The nominees are, because I wear my L's very well and I make fun of myself very well. I don't pat myself on the back enough. I need to be nicer to Brian. Nico Collins, a guy who I will admit there was like maybe a month there where I was starting to lose faith if he'd ever get a quarterback, but I've liked him for a long time, and he was good this year. Ayuk was a big flag plant for me this year. I think he's shown why people love him so much. I think some cheap running backs like Jerome Ford and Kyron Williams and Ty Chandler, who like people have seen, like I've been higher on them than others, and I like collecting them in drafts. I would say that Anthony Richardson, just from what we've seen, I'm going to take a victory lap, but also related to that Pittman was okay with him too before Minshew took over, and I was standing firm that like Pittman will be fine, and I think he was fine and will be. I was cautious about Calvin Ridley, so I like that's not quite a victory lap because I did get sucked in there for a little bit, but listen, he had the one elite year without Julio Jones. He's just not this difference-making, alpha wideout. He's probably not going to be playing with Trevor next year, so who knows? Honorable mention is going to be McBride and young tight ends. One of my bold predictions was sort of this idea that like a lot of first and second year tight ends were going to be in the top 12. So I think I was pretty good with that. And the winner, Brandon Ayuk. I will show some concern because, I play a lot of DFS on a week-to-week basis. The joke is good luck picking which 49ers is going to go off, especially the non-CMC 49ers, right? But I just think Ayuk, we heard Debo say at the very beginning of like the preseason training camps and stuff like that like Ayuk is uncoverable. He's taken this big giant leap. And it's whatever. It's players talking about each other. It's off-season buzz. We don't care. And here we are. I think Ayuk putting up I think he was wide receiver 13 or 14 last time I checked. Putting up very good numbers, showing that while he is a little better, I think, against man than zone, that he is still beating zone because let's see, I mean the NFL plays 70% of zone. So I think when Brock Purdy can be given like a clean pocket and the time for Ayuk's routes to develop a little bit, Ayuk is really the guy that I want more than Debo. I like Debo. Debo is fun to watch, right? Get him the ball and yak and that kind of thing. But I think when I'm thinking about like an NFL wide receiver that can win on the outside, that's a good route runner, that like I'll throw a trust ball to, it's Brandon Ayuk. I love him, and that's going to be my victory lap for the year.
So the difference between Ayuk and Debo for me as a dynasty player is the type of game that they play and the fact that Debo's game really lends itself to injury more than Ayuk's. Anybody can get hurt. We know that. We see that constantly on a weekly basis. But just the fact that Debo's game is built on wrecking people means he's more likely to get hurt.
By the way, Ayuk, for me, Dynasty wide receiver 9.
Wow.
Aggressive.
Yes, that is aggressive.
I have him in a tier of 5 through 9 with Wilson, Olave, Tyreek, Amon-Ra, and Ayuk. The only reason Tyreek is in that tier and not above is the age thing. He's producing, so many points per game, but like he is 30, and those guys.
He's 29 and he did threaten us with retirement recently. So.
Yeah. So like he's not up there with Lamb and AJ Brown for me just because of that situation. Otherwise, he would be. Yeah.
And the fact that he's not available now when you actually need him, he's got zero value. Like you can't even do anything with him. Like let's say you're a contender looking to replace him, you can't really even trade him like to a non-contending team for a different piece. He's literally got zero value right now. It's crazy.
No, I remember coming into the year, I said when they're both on the field, I think Debo's better for fantasy, and I have Ayuk, just for the record, ranked 11th, one behind JSN. So I'm higher on him in Dynasty, mainly because his age and, like Jesse said, the injuries. But when Debo's on the field, I think he's the second best player on the 49ers. And I think that's shown in the way they run through Christian McCaffrey, then Debo, and then either Kittle or Ayuk. Should be like that, but that's just how it's been just because of the offense they're in and how efficient Debo is. So
I think that brings me to a fun transition into the next stuff that we were going to talk about, because I sent you a big rambling brain dump about sort of what I've seen in the 2023 season and really just the questions that come out. And a lot of it is kind of centered around this proliferation and success of Shanahan tree offenses. So, like, we've seen what McDaniel's doing with motion. We've seen what Bobby Slowick is doing in Texas. Obviously, what Shanahan himself, and McVay are doing, that sort of thing, right? Like, the one thing I saw with Debo, when they threw him a screen for a touchdown pass, the way the play was designed with the, like, formation and where they had the wide receivers and the motion, that by the time the ball was snapped and Purdy just turned and just threw a quick screen to him, Debo was now already on the edge with 4 guys ahead of him, which is essentially an offensive line, right? So it was like a running play just to Debo, right? And that kind of innovation is, something that's really, I think, this tug of war, this chess match, this cat and mouse match with defenses and offenses, right? For those who, may need a refresher, I'll give you the quick and dirty. The Fangio-esque defenses that sit back and try to prevent explosives, open up things from intermediate passing and matriculation down the field. So the key is, like, you have to do that well, but also find ways to get explosives, because that's really how you win analytically, is producing explosive plays. And so to try to beat these sort of Fangio-esque defenses, there's kind of been 2 ways that people are doing it. Some do it both ways. One is more gap running, 12 personnel, bigger guys. The other is very innovative things with scheme, formation, motion, route combinations, and things like that. To the point now where what I'm seeing, at least, and I want y'all's feedback on this, what's most important is the offenses who can scheme their guys open to where there's separation once they're targeted and they're in space when they get the ball. And to me, that's a really key thing in the 2023 NFL. And then downstream from that is decisions that we should be making about players. Like, does a boundary guy versus, a guy who's a little more versatile? Does the boundary guy lose a tiebreaker, right? Does a guy in the whiz kid offenses, I forgot to throw Ben Johnson in there, right? Do they lose a tiebreaker because they're not going to be schemed open, right? Like Joe Brady, one of the things people like about Joe Brady is like that he's changed some things in Buffalo with targeting and running backs and that sort of thing, but he also has a reputation for not being one of these I make guys open through the scheme, So I don't know. So, like, when I'm looking at comparing a guy like, I don't know, like Puka, who's in a McVay offense, right, who fits the idea of sitting in that zone, getting open in space through the scheme, and then I compare him to, like, I don't know, a Drake London, who I think is probably more talented and is, I think has still, I think, there's a there with a high ceiling, but, and he runs those intermediate in-breaking routes, which I think is popular in the NFL this day. But, like, is he really in a type of offense that's going to scheme him open and get those production numbers going like Puka does? So, like, I guess I don't know if you read all my brain dump, but starting from there, how are the changes in the NFL downstream now affecting the choices you make about players to pursue or rank? Jesse, I'll give you this first. You're my IKB guy, and this was kind of what we were going to talk about with Fever this week.
Yeah, so I definitely am with you where I think the big boundary X receiver where he's necessary in the NFL still, because you have to be able to beat press. Their teams are going to play some press, and if you're vulnerable to it, they're going to play a lot of it, right? So you have to have that player. But as far as production goes, I don't think he's, I don't think that type of player is really where you're going to get most of your production, right? So, for an example, I would much rather have really the big versatile receivers are going to be the stars. And there are a few of them coming out this year, like MHJ, Roma Dunze, guys that I love, versus another guy that I think is going to go in the first round, but fits that boundary mold, like you were saying, in Keon Coleman.
Yeah.
Right. That's somebody that I think I'm going to fade a little bit. The talent is still immense, and he could absolutely be T. Higgins or Drake London. Not that being Drake London is the greatest thing in the world right now, but I mean, his talent is there. If he had a quarterback and an offensive coordinator or head coach that gave a shit that he existed, I think that Drake London could ball, right? But who's to say that, if Arthur Smith were not to be there next year, that they wouldn't emphasize it, a different part of the field, or Pitts, the running game, Bijan, that kind of thing. So, make a long story short, yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to fade the guys that I think are high point contested catch guys, because George Pickens types that I don't think are as useful for fantasy.
Mm-hmm. So Pittman versus Tank Dell, I have them in the same tier of like wide receiver, like 10 to 20. I don't know, some big ass tier of just like everybody is in there, right? I mean, I like Pittman's floor. I think Dell's more for the current NFL. I think he might have the higher ceiling. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think he does. And you could even just stay on the same team and go Pittman versus Josh Downs. Right? So Josh Downs is that versatile type of player like we were talking about. He had some spike weeks before Pittman started bitching to the head coach that he wanted targets, so he started getting the targets. Right? But who's to say Anthony Richardson will be more about, we were saying that last offseason that Josh Downs was a really good fit because he's the type of guy that can get open immediately, which is something that Richardson will need, especially in the RPO game that we know he'll be running.
Josh, what about you? Are you keeping this in mind when you're looking at rankings and trades and things like that? Like, oh, well, this guy has like, the current role, or this guy is in like a Ben Johnson offense, whereas this guy isn't. How is this playing into how you're looking at these players?
Yeah, so I'm definitely starting to pay a lot more attention to the offensive coordinators. And there's one thing I noticed pretty recently. I honestly just assumed Andy Reid was calling plays for the Chiefs, but it's actually Matt Nagy. And I think that has a lot to do with Patrick Mahomes' not being as good. Their receivers drop a ton of passes. They're first in the league by a decent margin, but I also don't think the play calling has been nearly what it was in the past. And I thought that was Andy Reid, but more looking at it, I realize it's Matt Nagy calling the plays, and I do not like him as offensive coordinator. I don't think he's good for fantasy or even that good in real life. So I am going to start looking at that. And one reason is you can see with the Shanahan-type guys, I mean, he's worked with the GM and got the perfect offense for what he needs, because he's got Kittle, Juszczyk, Jawan Jennings. Those are basically offensive linemen that are out there in open space. They scheme to get guys open, and you're seeing teams that come from that coaching tree do that. I think Sean McVay's done a really good job this year, and I think it's not getting looked at enough for what he's had to work with. And I think that's because of his scheme, working with your players. And one more point on that. Mike McDaniel had a quote saying, like, my scheme has to change based on the players I have. And I don't think a lot of offensive coordinators are willing to do that. I think they're going to hammer down their style no matter what they have. And I think that's a huge flaw, especially in today's NFL, where analytics are playing a lot bigger part and defenses are adjusting better. And then the last point, I think wide receivers need to be able to run a full route tree. You need to be able to get separation at the line of scrimmage. One point of that, Mike Williams, he really struggled there for a little bit. A lot of that was the routes he was given. But once he started getting better at running intermediate routes, started getting better separation on underneath and intermediate routes, he started getting the ball a lot more and was a top 20 wide receiver before he got hurt. So,
okay, I'm going to give you a few names while we're in this tier of wide receivers that kind of are in this idea of, like, for lack of, like, it's more complex, but bigger dudes versus little dudes, boundary guys versus open in space guys, whatever you want to call it, right? But, like, my question is, do these following wide receivers in the NFL quote unquote need that alpha to be there, or do we have faith in them aside from that? Devonta Smith, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Jordan Addison.
What's the question? I'm sorry, you lost me a little bit.
Are they the I need an alpha there to be good guys? Yeah.
No, I don't think so. No, I think the way that the NFL works now, you don't need an alpha like the traditional, like we were just talking about, the AJ Brown or the gigantic X receiver. Like you don't actually have to have that guy for Devonta Smith to be successful. Devonta Smith is a very good boundary receiver in his own right. He can beat press, not with his strength, but with his quicks, right? And his knowledge and his hand fighting.
But like Addison, we've seen when obviously there was quarterback that gets in there too, but when Jefferson wasn't there, Addison was very quiet, and Jefferson
Last week.
No, when Jefferson wasn't
Jefferson
there.
did.
When he came back, he exploded. I think Addison's one of those guys. I think JSN is still TBD. I think I lean no on Devonta Smith. I lean yes on Addison. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I think it depends on the player. I think, and I said it, I thought Minnesota was a really good spot for Addison because I think he needs an alpha receiver there to take a little bit of the top cornerback off of him, because I think he can get shut down if he's on a really good receiver who's physical at the line. He's still got room to work on that. And I'm surprised by his touchdown equity Addison has had. I thought that would be an issue. But JSN, I have him ranked 10th. I think he has the ability to be the alpha on a team. We saw in the last game, he has the ability to beat people deep. He's good all over the field, and I think his situation.
No idea what you're talking about.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Well, I don't know what team they played, but he looks good. And
it was another form of bird. I don't know. Like it was. Yeah.
Just let me tell you, James Bradbury is now a garbage person. He eats garbage for a living.
But yeah, I think it just depends on the player. Zay Flowers, I think, might be one of those guys who needs an alpha. I was kind of unsure about that, but I think it would definitely help open things up, maybe underneath. But yeah, it's just player dependent.
What about Tank Dell? As great as Tank Dell is, does he need the defense to know that Nico's there?
He needs somebody. Yeah, he needs somebody. He seems like he would be very easy to bracket or double or take.
Does that matter for fantasy? Or are we just chasing Dell's ceiling? Because when we look at running backs, one of the things we think about is contingent upside, right? Like if this guy gets injured, what roles, what types of touches are these other guys going to get, right? Is the idea of, listen, if Nico and Noah Brown go down, Tank Dell might be asked. Does that go into how you value or rank them, Or is it just you're chasing ceiling because ceiling wins championships and I'll give me some Tank Dell?
Situation matters. We're just really bad, to quote Chris Harris. We're just really bad at determining what that situation is.
Okay, that's fair.
As a community, as a race, or as a species, we're really bad at it.
And I think because we're so bad at it, I'm probably just going to chase the upside, especially with guys like Tank Dell, because I actually see it kind of the opposite of you do, Jesse. I think the way they can move him around, give him the ball in the backfield, move him to the slot, put him in motion, and his ability to separate at each part of the field from the outside to the slot. I think he's a little bit harder to bracket. I think it's doable, but I think the fact that he's on the Texans and has guys like Noah Brown, Robert Woods, who are at least decent enough to beat these other cornerbacks that are left on one-on-one.
So with JSN, let's remember some things about JSN though, right? Like he's a rookie. He was hurt in the preseason, right? So that now delays the whole rookie development arc, pushes it back, right? He's running as wide receiver 3 on a team that isn't aggressive. They'll chess match their way into, if they can run and win, they will, right? Team that doesn't use 11 personnel much, middling quarterback play, and still he's flashed and his role has expanded. I've never really changed him in my rankings. He's kind of been sitting there around like 13, 14-ish like the whole time. My question is, can JSN be a slightly more explosive, although maybe not as good a technician, as like Amon-Ra or Keenan Allen, or is he going to be one of those guys who kind of needs the defense to worry about one of those bigger guys on the outside?
All right, I'll answer this with a callback. Yesterday, I traded Drake London and 207 for JSN. So that's what I think of JSN. Yes, I think he can be an alpha. I don't think Tyler Lockett's long for that team. Really hoping he doesn't come back next year.
That's my other question. What happens with Lockett next year? Yeah.
He's been with that team for so long. PD seems like a loyal guy. They may restructure and try to keep him around. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but if he leaves, I think there's quite a bit more production open for JSN. Like you said, they run a lot of 12 personnel, so it's tough for him. He's not seeing the field as much. They take DK off the field quite a bit as well. It's a little rough the way PD runs that show, but yeah, I believe in the talent enough just to think that at some point within a year or two, we're going to look back at this conversation and go, yeah, what we were thinking. JSN's the man.
Well, I've seen it floated that we clearly know that Stroud elevates players, because as much as we like certain things about some of these receivers, a guy like Noah Brown, who was like a 27-year-old cardio / run blocker on for a lot of the time on the Cowboys is now productive. And so the thesis is, who was JSN's quarterback for that 300-yard game? Was CJ Stroud. And it's sort of like the inverse of the Addison Pickett. I don't know. I don't believe it, because I love JSN, but yeah. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that stand out with JSN that I still have hope, and I still have him, like I said, in my top 10 for Dynasty wide receivers, and that's his college production with other two top 20 Dynasty wide receivers, Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. I don't look into that too much, but that paired with his shuttle and 3-cone drill at the combine, those were elite, like on the level of Tyreek Hill for quickness. So I think he has the ability to win at all levels on the field. I don't think he's like as fast as Tyreek Hill, but he does have really good agility, really good feet, and quickness getting in and out of breaks. And I think Tyler Lockett's due, if he stays on the team. I don't see why they would keep putting him out there. He's obviously not the same player he was.
One more wide receiver I want to ask you all about, but fun fact, Jesse, there are 3 wide receivers who have, first round draft capital plus only 10th percentile scores in the 3-cone. They are Kelvin Benjamin, Quentin Johnston, and
Des Bryant.
No.
Maybe current?
No. Well, he's currently a player.
Jalen Reagor.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, right? So T. Higgins. A lot of people are confident he's leaving. A lot of people are confident he's staying. Joe Burrow wants T. Higgins to stay, at least he said publicly. Can T. Higgins be a wide receiver 1 on another team, or is he just a fancy wide receiver 2 that we just keep hoping gets to be an alpha somewhere?
Josh, you go first. I keep jumping in.
I don't know. That's tough. I think he can be. I want to see it. I want to see him on a different team and see what he can do. I think it's possible, but I think there's enough wide receivers that would just be better than him that I don't think he would be wide receiver 1, but he'd be a solid wide receiver 2.
I think he can be. I think the answer is yes, talent-wise. He's got the speed, size, hands, knowledge. He finds soft spots in zone. He's a good player. He can be. Will he? We don't know, because if he goes to the wrong situation, it could be really ugly. If let's say Carolina hires a defensive coach, I don't think that'll happen, but let's say that they do, and they bring T. Higgins in, and it's the same stale kind of not innovative type of offense, and you got a big dopey Mingo on one side and T. Higgins on the other side. I think that would be very ugly. So I think the fit will also be very important. So it would be nice if he would, like, number 1, great, but with a number 2 or a 1B. You can't just expect T. Higgins to be the only game in town. And
Like he goes to the Cardinals with Hollywood. I think that would be nice.
That would be, yeah, it'd be a good fit. I mean, I also like Michael Wilson, so that would be a bummer. But yeah, it'd be a good fit.
So let's jump to quarterbacks then, and I'm gonna so before I do the question that's related to this big picture idea, I want to do a question that's very vibesy, right? It's very eye testy, right? That's very Greg Cassell with a Luden's cough drop, watching film in a dark room at night. So the importance of confidence for quarterbacks, especially younger quarterbacks, right? Now, there's a lot of factors that go into that confidence, right? Like a coach may fail you and something may get in your head, right? But the example I keep using is look at what Will Levis is doing versus what Bryce Young is doing, right? Now, there are factors in place that are helping Will Levis. There are factors in place that are hurting Bryce Young and vice versa. Bryce Young, the 101, right? You know, the pro-ready diagnostician, right, is playing with zero confidence. And what that means is they don't trust what they see, and there's fewer throws into tighter windows and trust balls and the types of things that people with confidence and swag have. Now, whether or not that confidence is warranted is a different story. I think Will Levis is the embodiment of the saying, move through the world with the confidence of a mediocre white man. But, you know, be that as it may, he's got confidence and poise, right? So I know this is vibesy, but is that something we should really be looking at? Like, look at this guy's shook and he's got happy feet and should we be willing to bail on quarterbacks quicker or lest we be stuck with Trey Lance shares like me?
I mean, does CJ Stroud exude confidence?
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
Do you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so through the process, I didn't think he did. I thought he was quiet.
Until he got on the field.
Okay.
I'll put it this way. There's a whole viral dance sensation that he started with his little dance in the end zone with that song. And it's he's not a talkative person, but he's got swag. He's got he exudes confidence to me out there, at least on the field, not off the field, maybe.
I think he's got trust in himself, trust in his receivers, trust in his coaches, and it's coming through that yeah, if I bail out of the pocket and scramble a little bit and I throw I'm gonna throw it accurately and my receiver is gonna catch it. Justin Fields doesn't have it, Bryce Young doesn't have it, Trey Lance didn't have it. They're shook.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I mean,
Fields
will hyper target DJ Moore though, so he's got confidence in him at least. Mm-hmm. That's a good question. It's largely immeasurable, so sure. something I probably won't put into my evaluation because I think it's
is team film saying that we need to quantify things.
It's not measurable on film either.
You don't have a category in the spreadsheet for poise that you check off, or?
I don't have a spreadsheet, Brian, because I don't do analytics. I have a notes app on my phone when I'm watching film. But no, I think it's really, really hard to get right. So if you want to take on something else that you're going to have a 10 to 20% accuracy rate on, go for it. Personally, this goes into and hey, maybe that's part of why quarterbacks are so hard to evaluate, is because how do you evaluate a human being? You don't even know.
Yeah.
Well, Will Levis puts mayonnaise in his coffee. I made some pretty big judgments about that.
And yes, me too. And
so I feel like I know a lot about him from that. So
and the rotten bananas with the peel on.
Yeah.
Oh God. But then I saw him, and let's go back to Will Levis a little bit. His first couple of weeks were real YOLO, thrown across his body, across the field, chucking it up. Probably should have thrown 5 more interceptions than he did. And then that shit stopped. He's been playing within himself and within the system. A little less YOLO than I think we want as fantasy managers, but it just shows that he's coachable. you know that Vrabel got in his ear and said, listen, buddy, you're not going to have a job long doing that kind of crap. Settle it down, rein it in, use your talents when you need them, that kind of talent when you need them. Otherwise, play within the system. And he's done that. And I think that regression in his numbers has kind of shown growth in his quarterback play.
So
if that makes any sense to you guys.
Yeah, but I think so. Here's proof that vibes matter. At least in all right. So the market that we're dealing with in the dynasty streets are human beings, and human beings vibes matter, right? Like ideas matter. The stink around a team matters. Like that's one of the reasons we say, oh, this guy's value is falling, but people are thinking wrong. So right. Like there's a friend of the show, Tom Tipple, posted in one of our sleeper leagues that we're in, right? Like, oh, this is a Levis legacy game, right? And I kind of jokingly gave it like a poop emoji. It's when he led the comeback drive. Okay, he led a comeback drive, right? But like, he's like, and that's great, and poise and like I agree with this. He's the example of confidence I brought up. I think he scored like 16.58 fantasy points that game. Like, see what, like, right?
There's still a run first team.
Like,
I mean, here's the thing, because I was probably just as low on Levis, if not lower than you were. I am impressed with what I've seen. I'm impressed with his rushing ability and watching him run with physicality.
Yeah.
But he still struggles reading the field, making more reads, reading the defense, and he's still struggling with accuracy on throws across the field. I mean, that you can work on, but he's still got some work to do. But I will say, for all the shit I've talked about Will Levis, I'm pretty impressed with him. And a lot of that is his confidence. Like, I want a quarterback kind of like the Brett Favre type who will just go and they're confident and they're just going to sling it out there instead of guys that just throw it away, or like Bryce Young is afraid to fit it into a tight window because he doesn't trust either himself or his receivers. So
so this is now the less vibesy quarterback question I have for you. Somebody sits down and says to you, Jesse, Josh, we've listened to Brian's 15-minute speech about changes in the NFL on like 7 different podcasts, right? What that now means is with the proliferation of those offenses, right? Those coaches want the not game managers, but timing and accuracy, run the offense well quarterbacks. There's a spectrum among those quarterbacks, but guys like Purdy, Stroud, Tua, Goff, right?
Flacco.
Right? So you should get ahead of the game and tear down from your Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, Lamar, because that's not the way things are trending. But even more than that, incoming rookies, right? As much as the NFL can, they don't control what's coming out of college, so they draft who they draft, but the NFL is going to start leaning back that way. The way that they've leaned to zero RB in reality now, they're going to lean toward those quarterbacks so that when we evaluate rookies, the high variance traitsy rookies like Anthony Richardson, who can break fantasy, may not be the guys that we want because the NFL might not desire them anymore. Is that crazy?
Depends on how many Shanahan type coaches you have out there. Like Shanahan, Sirianni, those kind of guys. Yeah, they want. Well, I'm sorry. Shanahan wants a guy that can run a system. Sirianni wants a guy with traits that he can mold a system around. Right. So it just depends on the type of coach that you have.
I'm not letting it really influence me or drop down those guys that I've seen be elite, like Allen, Mahomes. But it is something to keep an eye on and pay attention to. I think it'll affect more of the guys I have in the middle of the pack as opposed to lower down or higher up.
Because the other take on this season is with the injuries and poor quarterback play, that those elites, those 4 that I mentioned, are even more valuable.
Yeah, I think people are making huge mistakes with people like, and I mentioned it earlier with Herbert. Josh mentioned the weapons with Mahomes not being great and the offensive coordinating not being great. I agree. I mean, I think it's a mistake to think it's going to be this way in perpetuity. right? When you have these ultra mega talented guys at the top of your offense, teams are going to do whatever they can to fix whatever issues they're having. So I expect to see weapons brought in and a better offensive scheme in KC, that's for sure. I mean, it's just how disappointed is everybody that they need receiving production, and this thing that worked so well last year with McKinnon just is not a thing. God, can we bring back the enemy for the love of Jesus?
So let me ask you about Rashee Rice, a guy that I'm interested in, a guy that I love, right? And a guy who I wrote an article about. I liked him when he was drafted by the Chiefs. I didn't like it because I didn't think that Sky Moore and Tony were going to register a complete zero. So I thought he was just going to be one of 17 wide receivers they had who weren't named Travis Kelce. He's certainly risen, and the things that we liked about him, he's shown. But as much as the targets per route run has always been there, and now the route participation is increasing, the touches he's getting are still a little manufactured-y.
Gimmicky.
Do we worry about that? Like, you know, does that affect how you're like, if you've got him in a tier, are you like, you know, he isn't as versatile as I need him to be to really have faith in him? I don't know. Like, I love him, and, you know, he's doing nothing but ascending, but it's a thing.
Josh.
It just depends, I guess. Like, I see it as a good thing, and this might be because I have a lot of Rashee Rice shares. I see it as a way that they know that they need to get him the ball because they know they don't have much else outside of Travis Kelce, who even then doesn't look like himself. He doesn't run the same. He looks like he's hurt. Like, I don't think it's just because of age, but I don't think he's healthy. And I think they just realize in order to be competitive, they just got to get the ball to Rashee Rice. And I think it's going to be the same when Pacheco comes back. I think they're going to throw it to him a lot more and make sure they get him good touches.
I agree with both of you guys. And that's why I like Rashee Rice this year. He's actually in semifinal lineups for me. Like over other players that I could start. Rashee Rice is a priority to get into my lineup right now. And I think, his value's risen to, maybe a first and a second. Is that crazy?
No, I don't think
so. When we were spending high to mid second to get him, he's now worth a first and a second. We expect KC to overhaul that offense and bring in weapons, which means they won't need to manufacture so many touches for Rashee Rice. And a lot of that could go away, and he could go back to be in that mid-second type of value. He's a screaming sell this offseason to me.
Interesting.
Even though I like the player and I think there is more in store for him, I expect him to take just a step back because he won't have the chunk of they're using him out of necessity right now.
And you were saying before that you expect, sort of a bounce back from Kelce next year too.
Yes, that as well. Like Josh says, he does not look healthy. He doesn't look like himself. And I don't think he lost a step because he looked great in the beginning of the year before he got hurt.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I have probably 6 or 7 shares of Rashee Rice. I'm probably going to do that in 2, maybe 3 leagues just to kind of hedge the bet and also just get a good return on what I got for like the 210 and a rookie draft, So I'm going to do it.
Yeah, he could have gone anywhere from 201 to 212 the way last year's second round was.
Yeah.
Let's switch to running backs. We've made a lot on both shows out of running backs all year. Going into the season, the 2023 offseason carousel, guys are going to be left jobless and they're going to take shorter and cheaper salary, right? All that was true. Zero RB is now not just in fantasy, it's reality in the NFL. It's the new meta, et cetera, right? I look at my dynasty running backs and I don't fucking want anybody. It's like, unless I'm contending, like I don't want any running back as a store of value whatsoever, outside of like a few guys that like I really trust as like I want these guys, right? Other than that, it's like, give me who's producing now and whatever, right? So like Kyron Williams, right? Let's start with him. A guy who I liked. I defended despite his combine numbers, although I was realistic. My whole thing was his play speed matters more than his 40 speed. He's versatile, can play passing downs, et cetera, right? But still acknowledging, limitations to his traits and that sort of thing. He's now getting McCaffrey usage And by virtue of like everybody else falling and or being old or whatever, he's my dynasty RB9 right now. But at the same time, he is a guy who is a 5th round pick, a middling athlete. His production is based on I'm versatile and I'm good at football, not like I'm explosive. And it's aided by heavy use of 11 personnel and therefore lighter boxes. And the fact that he's, to his credit, can play passing down so he's not telegraphing the play, right? In other words, my dynasty RB9, I could totally see having a backfield partner next year that will complicate him and hurt his value. And that's my 9. Like, if you're not named Bijan, Breece Hall, Gibbs, I guess A-Chain, maybe James Cook is ascending, right? Like, if you want to throw McCaffrey in there, like, unless you're those, like, I don't want you. Like I don't like. Who are you? Get out of here. Like
Travis Etienne. Come on.
No.
You're.
Come on,
he
Brian.
Is he is RB3, Brian, and he's gotten more volume. He's gotten all the volume. He's played extremely healthy. He's got like 1,200 yard games. Like, he's getting catches. He's efficient.
He's my 8. He's my 8. I got him ahead of Kyler, but I don't think he's special in any way. He's not. He's
absolutely is.
No, he's not. I don't have him with guys that I just named where like I'm holding on to them no matter what, despite the fact they're running backs. Etienne's not like that. Etienne is barely better than, I don't know, Tony Pollard, Kenneth Walker, right? Like, whatever.
Here's your tier of these are the guys I am keeping at running back. You have to make a serious offer to get. CMC, Bijan, Breece, Etienne, A-Chain, Gibbs. All of those guys will win you dynasty championships if healthy. Just outside of that are your Walker and DeAndre Swift tier, which are guys that I would like to have and are helpful. I actually have Pacheco in there. Going back to Kyren Williams, he's not close to that tier for me. And it's for all the reasons you mentioned, plus the biggest one to me is McVay's just like complete disloyalty to running backs. Look at the way he has treated Darrell Henderson over the years. Jesus. I mean, he's like the redheaded, it's cliche, but redheaded stepchild. He just, all right, you're cut. All right, you're back on. You're back on the practice squad. All right, you're my lead back again. Like, I mean, he put him on the practice squad and kept Royce Freeman up. He does not care about these guys.
So we just lost our sponsor, Ginger Kids, who places redheaded stepchildren.
So
I mean, it's just whereas I look at Kyren and start to believe that this guy can be the running back going forward more than just this year. And then I look back at McVay's history and start to think he's not going to do that. He's going to bring somebody in. He's going to build depth because that's kind of the place that they were lacking this year. And he fixed everything else last offseason. He'll probably fix that this offseason.
So I disagree with that almost as much as I disagree with Brian's takes on ETN. Because that was my main reason for being against Tank Bigsby as much as Brian was. I'm like, he is not Travis Etienne. He's not even close to Travis Etienne. And that was one of the big disagreements me and Brian had. But and part of this is because I'm a Notre Dame fan, but I really try not to be biased towards teams I like and watch. But it did let me watch a lot of Kyren Williams. And even though on like film or like in the gym and like running, he doesn't look athletic, but when he's on the field, he has breakaway speed. He always pushes the pile forward, and he can run routes as a receiver. And I don't have him as high as Brian does. I have him, I think, like 13, 12. But I think even if they bring somebody in, I think he's still good enough, and I think he's got McVay's trust enough to where he'll be the first guy, and then they'll just work the other guy in so he doesn't have to touch the ball 25 times a game, because I don't know if he can hold up doing that.
The other thing to keep in mind – I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The other thing you keep in mind is that the free agent class and the rookie class at running back are not anywhere as good as they were in 2023. Especially if it's just the UFAs and we're not talking about guys who like might get cut like an out in their contract, like Mixon. Like it's so like, so I guess my question is, I know we've always said, well, it's running back. I don't care about running back, or running backs don't have the value that wide receivers do. But like, I literally am looking at this, and if I'm a contender, right, and I have Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, Javonte Williams, Tony Pollard, I might trade them now because I don't know what the hell's they're gonna be like at the end of the offseason. Have some liquid, get some capital, so I'm more flexible, and then buy back into my running back pool at the end of the offseason. Because here's the thing, I can totally see a situation where when the carousel stops and the dust settles, we want whatever the hell Joe Mixon is doing in 2024 more than we're gonna want, I don't know, DeAndre Swift, Jerome Ford, Ty Chandler. I mean, it's like Chuba Hubbard, right? Like these are
weird that you would. It's weird that you would put a pedigreed starting running back in with those other scrubs. But
who, Swift?
Yeah.
But the thing with Swift is like up until last week, there was some stink on Swift that like, oh, he's doing what he did with the Lions. He's falling out of favor again, and he's always going to be limited by the tush push and the fact they don't throw to running backs.
And the fact that our offensive coordinator is a piece of shit.
So,
I'm sorry, Josh. Go ahead, Josh.
God damn it. Well, I can real quick. CMC was literally calling the plays before they happened last night on the Manning cast.
Yeah,
That's ridiculous.
He was.
But go on, Josh.
There was one more point about Kyron Williams. I think Kyron Williams is a lot better than Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers. So I just think he's more talented all around than both of those backs by a decent amount. So I don't think he's going to fall out of favor as quickly, especially how he's showing. He's winning them games, especially when Kupp was hurt and they were just relying on Puka. So I think he's won the favor of McVay more than anyone else has.
All right, I'm going to throw out a few running back names here, and you tell me. I'm sorry, Jesse. Go ahead, and then we'll.
Just my last point on this is my fear is that Dameon Pierce. That he could go the way of Dameon Pierce, where low draft capital guy has a breakout season, comes back, can't repeat it, and gets replaced by someone like Devin Singletary or Royce Freeman.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So that's a good name to bring up, Singletary. I want to ask you about 2024 outlook for a few guys. Devin Singletary, right? Is he going to be useful in 2024? He's often been, I think, overly criticized, but he does have limitations. He's small, he's slow, etc. Right? Is this the we squeezed a good year out of an aging, 26-year-old running back, and then he falls apart next year, or is this just the magic of Bobby Slowick and he can still be fantasy relevant? Maybe not as the numbers he's putting up this year, but that you're going to want to have Singletary around next year.
Yeah, he's never had a season where he wasn't helpful in some way to a fantasy team. So I'm going to assume that he will be again. He's worth a second, but people want to pay a third.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think it would make sense for them. This is just my opinion. I'm no GM, but I think they should go and get another running back who can fit their zone system a little bit better. Mm-hmm. That way they can still use Singletary, but not rely on him the way they're doing. I think it's kind of hindering their offense as a whole. And, they're pretty set on receiver for now. They got two good ones to build around. Their defense has been really improved. So I think they'll go get a running back. I don't think they'll spend serious draft capital on one just because there's not, but I don't see what's stopping them from going to get somebody else.
That is a really good point you just made, actually, that at least there is scheme stability, whereas Dameon Pierce had to go through a whole regime and scheme change.
Yeah,
he doesn't fit that new scheme.
Yeah.
No, he's not good at running zone. He's really good at power. So if he goes somewhere else, I still like Dameon Pierce a little bit, but he's not a good fit for that system.
Yeah.
So.
Rachaad White, workhorse, volume, not super talented, efficient, or explosive, but has been improving. He's been a rankings riser. What is that team going to look like next year? Is Baker going to be quarterback? Is Tucker going to get in the mix? Because by the way, they cut Keyshawn Vaughn, right? And I think Tucker's going to get a few more snaps in the next couple of weeks. I don't know about Chase Evans, who cares? But Rachaad White, do we buy, not do we trade for the player, but do we buy the idea that Rachaad White can essentially be the horizontal, have the same sort of role value, et cetera, next year?
The talent level tells me no, but it told me that going into this year. So I'm already wrong once. So I'll probably be wrong again about it. I'm not buying into him. I'm not giving you, like what you have to pay to get him is insane. So like, I don't have any, so I won't have any. That's kind of the way that goes.
Yeah, I think he gets shit on a little bit too much. I think he's fine in space. It's just getting him in space with that offensive line is really tough. So I think that's why he's getting a lot of passes. And he does make a few people miss. He's not as good as some people think he is, the guys who really love him. But I also don't think he's as bad as other people think he is either. I think he's fine. I think they'll bring someone in or get Tucker more touches. I'm not a fan of Tucker, so I think they'll go get somebody else and just roster those three guys because I just don't see him sustaining that many carries and this many receptions and staying healthy. He's done it this year, but I just don't know how long that'll last.
He really surprised me by taking. He took a leap in. I guess it's his play style / vision. It just seems to have taken a leap this year. Whereas I didn't think he played like an NFL running back, he played like a big satellite back last year, and this year he's playing like an NFL running back. He finds the cutbacks, where I didn't think he was doing that last year, and I didn't see it much at college either. So guys can definitely grow, and I think he has.
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's confidence. I think it's a vibes thing like we were talking about. I think confidence does play a part. I think he's more confident in what he can do in his reads and knowing he's going to get the touches and not get benched if he screws up. So,
So last question with running back. Based on everything that we've talked about, changes in the NFL, what's been happening with the position as far as zero RB and value and all that, right? Coming into the rookie draft process now, we're already seeing, I think, sort of guys like Bucky Irving or Devin Neal, right? Sort of rising a little bit. And guys like Braylon Allen for some, Raheem Sanders especially, right, falling a little bit. That we want Jahmyr Gibbs. We don't want, even if you're a really good, between the tackles, you can take 300 touches a year, Najee fucking Harris. We don't want you, right? Is that going to affect how we now look at, if it's affecting wide receivers, the littles and bigs? Is it going to affect how we evaluate rookies now? Are they a fit for the new NFL?
The way I see it, I think it is changing in that aspect, and we're looking for guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, Devon Achane types. I think unless you're like Nick Chubb and you're super efficient, like Derrick Henry was, like Joe Mixon was earlier in his career, just really efficient through the tackles, and you got a good line. That's the only way, but I just don't see that being as much as something they're looking for, because Jahmyr Gibbs has run actually really well between the lines. So I think they're going to look for someone that can do both, but might more specialize in being out in space and doing other things.
Size for me isn't going to matter as much. I can tell you that. And that's, I had already been trending there, and I'm all the way there. There's no magic number for running backs anymore. You don't have to be a certain weight. The way the league is now, it just, like I said, it doesn't really matter so much. Rocket Sanders going back to school, by the way. I think he's
really?
Transferring to South Carolina. I saw.
Gonna lose a little weight. Do that maybe.
I mean, it's hot down there.
He got up to like 245 this year or some shit like that.
It's hot and humid down there. It's hard to keep weight on in Columbia.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's all I really have. It's situation dependent. Like where we're bad at reading situations, I don't think that applies so much to running back landing spot. I think it's pretty easy to see, when there's a good fit for a system and, the draft capital and all that kind of stuff. So I think that I am going to more and more let the NFL sort that out for me. That last year I took a hard hit on Sean Tucker in my evaluation of him. There's still something there that I don't know. But as far as running back goes, like there's just obvious scheme fits and scheme, players that don't fit so well in schemes. Like Damian Pierce was one of them. Or like when Zeke got drafted to Dallas, it was obvious that he was going to smash. And then there's players like Saquon Barkley that just have all the talent in the world and have had to go through 4 schemes and 5 head coaches and one of the worst, probably 3 of the worst offensive lines we've seen in the last 10 years. So like I think running back is probably less dependent on the talent these days and more dependent on the situation, unless you're talking about an ultra talented player like some of the guys, the guys that I listed earlier.
Yeah. So my last thought on running back, it's probably how I shifted the most through the years, how I drafted running backs. But then I get in startups and like our not a going for 2 staff league, people I think have overcorrected just a little bit on waiting to get running backs, because in that league, 3 of my 4 flex spots are Mostert, Achane, and Rachaad White, and I got Bijan as my other one. And that wasn't me trying to go get running backs. They started falling really far, and I have a few other leagues like that. And I don't know how it's going to play out in 2 to 3 years down the road. I might be in trouble. I might need to go make some trades now and get ahead of it. But for now, it worked out. Just watching people overcorrect and just kind of staying down the middle.
Yeah, Josh, good dynasty players can always take those shorter term assets like running backs, get the production, and then get the return on the menu. People fade running backs because they think that they're going to turn to dust. Well, they're still the talented guys are still going to have 7-year careers, 7-8-year careers. So there's plenty of time to make trades in that time. And if if you're strategic about it, trade people when they need running backs, either when they're building their team in the off season or in season when they get injuries or in the playoffs. You always do fine. I flipped. I had a team last year with all of the olds, right? Eckler, Mixon, Dalvin Cook, King Henry. I flipped them all for like young wide receivers within the last year. And it wasn't easy. You got to keep sending offers. I know you don't like to do that, Brian. You don't have time. But you just got to work it. And if somebody's not interested, you move on to the next guy. And if he's not interested, you just wait. Bide your time. Eventually something will happen and your player will be, relevant again. I will suggest those sooner than later. Like, for instance, Mixon for Debo is something that I did 3 times in the last year. Like, I got Debo for Mixon. People have an appetite for, how do I put it? Running backs that have been around for a long time have also been around on people's championship teams. And their nostalgia does exist for these players. Right. And when you get in season and they're producing, they think, oh, shit, I shouldn't have faded him last offseason. He's not done yet. Let me go get him. Right. And you can get a Devontae Smith or something. Devontae Smith for Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison. I did that twice.
Yeah.
Last offseason.
Still.
Yeah. So maybe one of the things that I'm going to bring into 2024 is cutting leagues so I can be more active in each individual league and give it the attention it needs. I've been saying it for fucking 3 years, and I do better. And I just I'm still at 40, and it's just probably a little too much. But all right. So tight ends. I don't want to say real quick because we love talking about this stuff, but the other thing I wanted to talk about was the changing of the guard at tight ends. Right, Kelsey bounced back or not. Kincaid has flashed. I still love him because I think there's a there attached to Allen where he can next year be better than Laporta is this year. So I still have faith there. Laporta obviously has smashed. McBride has smashed. Pitts has shown a little life towards the end of the season. Maybe he's fully healthy next year. Mayer has flashed. Njoku's not old. He's done well, but he's not exactly like he's 2017 he was drafted, right? So I guess he is kind of old, right? But, and then, we've seen Tucker Kraft replace Musgrave well, and Musgrave was pretty good when he was in, right? Likely has flashed when we've seen Andrews out, right? So right now, I still have, I guess, I don't know what you want to call it, loyalty, faith, stability. I have Hawkinson and Andrews as 1-2 in a tier. because it's like I can rely on those guys to be target hogs, and Mark Andrews is back, essentially still even be a wide receiver one, even with Flowers and OBJ and that sort of thing. Then I have the young guys that make my nipples hard, Kincaid, Laporta, McBride, and Pitts, and then I have Kittle, Kelsey, Goddard, and sort of like a sub young guys tier, and then sort of everybody else. So one of my hot takes, my bold predictions on both shows was that I haven't looked at it yet though, but that something like 3 rookies and 2 second-year guys were going to be in the top 12 tight ends. Speaking of changes in the NFL, whether it's 12 personnel or whether it's a smaller tight end who can move around, be big slot, etc., we're seeing these guys thrive. We're seeing in the DFS streets, if you've got a $5,300 tight end, you'll put him in the flex before you put in a lot of the $5,300 wide receivers, right? So what do we make of what's happening at tight end? We all play in tight end premiums. I mean, the whole world is seeing these guys explode. Are there any takes you have or values that we can find, strategy approaching tight end with this changing of the guard?
Well, in the premium leagues, I think my strategy literally is just to load up on the cheapest tight ends I can find and wait. Really, it's kind of hard to go wrong in tight end these days. A lot of people hate the position. I love it. Like even that lower tier of Njoku and Dalton Schultz, even Gerald Everett, I'll start those guys on my flex all day in premiums because you're almost guaranteed 12 points.
Yeah. So coming into this year, if you can't get one of the top 3 guys, just wait. Like you said, I've got a lot of Njoku in like rounds 10, got a lot of Schultz, guys like that. And I have 3 or 4 of those guys I got between rounds 10 and 17 who I was able to plug in to the flex spot. But I think going into this year, because I put McBride and Laporta as 1 and 2 with Andrews 3, that's my top tier right there. I think those 3 kind of separated themselves from the rest. And the reason is they all demand targets. And the fact that McBride and Laporta are doing it at such a young age at a position that's not too typical, I decided to go and put them up there. Because I don't see too much regression coming from Sam Laporta, but I do see a little bit coming from Trey McBride just because I think they'll have some weapons. But even then, he was elite in college, and he's showing that he demands targets now, and that's what I look for in a tight end.
I see a little – I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I'm going to try and take a stab at the top 6 or 7 tight ends more often, especially in premium leagues, instead of just waiting.
I see a little regression for Laporta only because it's almost like the 49ers where it's like, who's going to hit this week? Is it Gibbs? Is it Monty with 2 goal line touchdowns? Is it Amon-Ra who hits every week? That sort of thing. So there's a little concern I have there, but obviously I love him. Jesse, how about you? Tight ends, where you at?
Yeah, I just an apology, Josh. I forgot about Hockenson earlier when we were talking. I literally forgot that Hawkinson's my tight end 1.
I'm sorry. You already talked about loading up. I'm sorry. My brain is fucking fried.
Yeah. But no, that's all I had. I mean, literally my tight end 1 is Hawkinson. I just there's nobody that I am more confident is going to get me 15 to 50 points every week.
So you're in a startup. It is, I don't know. Well, I won't tell you the number to tell you where I have them, but Kyler Murray or Trey McBride?
I mean, Kyler.
Because it's a super flex, right?
Yeah, it's kind of not close.
I kind of have them close when I think about it. I've been playing recently with like where I would like how would I like what my super flex rankings are, not just my positional rankings. I mean, obviously it's whatever, but I got to play around it. I ended up right now with Murray at 27, so I guess that's an early 3rd round pick now. And then
Kyler's
and then McBride at like 31, right behind him. So, so you're saying I'm low on Murray? Okay. Would you rather have Murray or T.J. Hockenson?
Kyler. I have Kyler. He's a 1st round startup for me.
Really?
He's quarterback 6 or 7 or something for me.
Wow, spicy. Okay.
I just love the way he looks, man. Once they get their shit worked out and he comes back next year, I'm telling you've got top 3 Kyler again. He looks like that guy.
Kyler or Purdy?
Kyler.
Kyler or Dak?
Kyler.
Kyler or Tua?
Yes.
That's your son. That's your son. Okay.
You
All
will
right.
never hear me talk poorly about Tua Lipa.
Josh, what about you? Kyler versus his tight end that he throws to, in let's say 1.75.
It's really tough. I did an overhaul of my rankings today, and I had a little bit of a shakeup with Trevor Lawrence and Kyler Murray being out of my top 10.
Wow.
But I still think just in a super flex league, I might just go ahead and take a shot on Kyler. Like, I think the upside's still there. I'm just kind of uncertain and unsure moving forward. So I still think in super flex league, I'm loading up on quarterbacks after the way this year's going. So probably still Kyler, even though I'm lower than him on most. It'd have to be over like a point premium. If it was a full point premium, so 2 points, I might consider doing it then. But
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Kyler. I think he gets too much shit from people. Like, it's one of those things where like what you see on TV is affecting your feelings, but when you look at the fantasy points, it shouldn't be. But I don't know. Like, let me see. I think I have to think a little bit more about him and where he fits in, because I'm saying like I might rather have like Jahmyr Gibbs or Breece Hall than Kyler. You know, like
I would, yeah.
So for me, it's like, you know, Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, and then whatever order you have: Lamar, Herbert, Tua, Kyler, and I'm still there with Trevor.
So you have Kyler where they were taking like Fields and Trevor Lawrence this year in like startups.
Yes,
around like
correct.
6th or 7th overall.
Yeah, and in fact, and I had him pretty close to that last year. Really, it was just that like the one startup we did together, I actually kicked myself for not waiting to take Kyler, because I just he went somewhere in like late third round, and
I knew Tom was going to take him. He was a pick ahead of me, and I was like, mother. Yeah.
But like I just couldn't, because you know, in a startup I don't do the whole productive struggle or whatever. I'm always trying to win, so I couldn't do it and think that I was going to win this year, even though I just lost to Josh, everybody, just so you know, in the first round. So I'm not winning shit. Good game, by the way.
No,
so
it was.
So you'd rather have Kyler than, let's say, the wide receivers right after Jefferson and Chase, like CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave.
So there's now you're talking a little bit.
Okay.
Olave,
I'm trying to figure out where. Yeah.
So like for me, it's still Jefferson and Chase tier of their own, and then it's AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb. I may have another wide receiver up there if I really look at it, possibly Tyreek, just because if he's healthy, he's a league winner. Those two tiers of wide receivers, like Jefferson or Chase, it's very possible, and then AJ Brown and CeeDee Lamb, maybe. It just depends on, you know, where I am in the draft, whether I think that I can get other quarterbacks who I'm drafting with, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
I mean, it just comes down to strategy, but value-wise, I think they're right there with him.
Okay.
So do you want, while we're on that league or just talked about it, when hedging your bets goes wrong, my second so in this league, I was like, I'm going to try some different stuff, get some guys I don't have. In the second round, I took Deshaun Watson over Tua and Dak. And then in the third round, I took Bryce Young over Kyler Murray. And now I'm really struggling at quarterback in that league. So I had to go trade for Dak, which I did. But
I took Fields over all of those guys. So, and that was the same thing. I had no field shares. I'm like, all right, this is going to be the one experiment I do with Fields, and
that's my one Bryce Young share too, and I don't want him anymore.
One last. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They're talking about bringing in, an offensive-minded, analytics-driven head coach, and if that happens, you could see a real like Trevor Lawrence type of rebirth out of Bryce Young. So I think he's still a buy this offseason for how cheap you can get him relative to the 102 or 103 or 104 where he was going. But I'm afraid to do it. Like I can see, like my brain tells me there's a really good chance that this guy gets the coaching he needs and becomes the player, that we thought he was going to be. And therefore he's worth the late first I can probably get him for. But then I get a little scared, when I think about doing that, I'm like, but what if that's, I don't know. What if that's Travion Henderson? Would I rather have him? I don't know. Yeah.
One last question. I know we've been at this for over almost 2 hours, and I really appreciate your time. I love you both. Bijan, obviously there's the Arthur Smith situation, but in 2024, you're doing a startup right now. Bijan was going at the 1-2 turn startups this year. Where does he go?
Bijan?
Yeah, upcoming startups. Where
That is entirely dependent on the Arthur Smith question, because that is where people's confidence is shaken in Bijan. It's not the talent. Everybody sees the talent. It's the usage.
Let's say you were doing a D-Gen, like, got to do a startup as soon as maybe even before the Super Bowl ends, kind of thing. So we don't have that info maybe yet. On
probably goes a full round later.
Yeah. Although we probably will know if Smith is fired or not by then, right? Yeah.
Right after the season, right after the regular season, I would.
So if you were doing it today, right, Josh, would you take Bijan or Lamb, Brown, Olave, Wilson receivers?
I hate to say this, but I'm probably going with the receivers. I kind of changed how I build my dynasty team around. If I can get it, if he's there middle, late second, and Lamb and Brown are gone, I would consider it, because I have a tier break after Lamb and Brown before it gets to Wilson, Olave, and St. Brown.
Same.
So if I can get Lamb or Brown, I'll take them. But otherwise, I'll probably just take Bijan because I'm going to buy the talent.
Okay,
Bijan
I buy
and Brees
that.
are right there for me. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I have that tier at wide receiver too. Lamb, Brown, and then But the question is, does Bijan fit in between them or after them? Yes.
Nah, I'm taking both of them.
And let me ask you guys, CMC or Bijan?
Bijan. I mean, I love. It's Bijan.
CMC
Josh.
for me.
Okay. Yeah, CMC is more likely to win you a league.
Yeah.
But for how long?
Yeah, I have 2 leagues where I have him and Tyreek Hill, and it doesn't really matter what I put in my flex positions because most weeks they do it for me. So if I can get Christian McCaffrey, I'm probably still going to do it because he's still running pretty well. So,
I was thinking yesterday, I have a lot of these deep thoughts about big picture dynasty stuff when I'm walking my dogs and that sort of thing, and I was thinking about the narrative on CMC, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, when the narrative was, he's always injured, and you could get him for whatever you could get. Remember that dip, right? And maybe it was before last season was that dip, maybe.
Yep.
And now, forget it. And then what Bijan was going for, and now how close they are. And I was just like, wow. I remember I was in a Debbie league. I wound up leaving because a bunch of jabroni chodes. But I was asking about Bijan, and the guy was like, Bijan is worth CMC plus, and then he told me these 2 other guys that I was like, right, and that was even when CMC's value wasn't what it is now, and it's what a world we live in, It
comes down to something that one of my co-hosts, Mike Casper, says quite a bit. Do you want a sexy team or do you want a trophy?
Oh, sexy for sure.
Okay.
I want to win.
Then you want Bijan.
Yeah,
I want Dynasty
trophy
Bikini
every time.
season. I want Dynasty Bikini season when the spring is heading into the summer, and I've done my rookie drafts. I can show that I have a bikini body on my roster. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
If you want to screenshot your roster to a bunch of people, you want Bijan. Yeah. But if you want trophies, you want CMC.
All right, so let's wrap this up. I know you guys are saying finally. Let's wrap it up. So
I'm sitting over here getting fevers and chills the whole episode.
as we head into 2024, what are you looking to do? What are your priorities this offseason in Dynasty? Are you looking for wizard offenses or open in space running backs or slot receivers or Purdy quarterbacks? What is your priorities for the 2024 NFL season? I wish there was a way I could control the volume on that. That seemed a little loud to me.
No, that was perfect.
It wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. At least to me. It's probably blasting the people listening.
Give me some warm fuzzies. Josh, please.
Yeah, so I'm kind of changing how I build my teams. I haven't done any startups yet. I actually almost joined a free one on Twitter just to see how things were shaking out this early. But I'm definitely going to start building around quarterbacks and receivers who can run every route on the route tree and demand high target shares. So I'm going to go for targets. I'm going to try and stay as young as I can and wait for people to overcorrect on either running backs or older players like I did with like Mike Evans, even DeAndre Hopkins, guys like that. I'm going to get them middle to later rounds and just wait for people to overcorrect and just grab value when I can after the first 5 rounds.
I'm going to trade off about half of my running backs. I'm going to look at my teams and I'm going to pick probably 2, maybe 3 running backs that I'm going to keep, and I'm going to sell the rest.
Yep.
That's my priority. Guys like Swift, maybe Ken Walker, depending on what I can get for him. Jacobs, Pacheco. They better watch their asses on my roster.
There's one more thing I'm going to do. I'm cutting out orphan leagues. I joined about 5 this year. Those were the ones I paid the least attention to. It wasn't the team build I wanted to. It's a lot more work than I'm willing to put in. So I'm cutting out orphans. I'm going to give those back up. I'm going to pay the fees, whatever. But I think I'm just done taking on orphans.
I think for me, that's a good segue. Like one of my priorities is going to be cutting back on leagues, and that's one way to do it is just having no orphans. I'm not going to not join startups. I know that. So the question is like trimming other leagues that are maybe a little more stale or that sort of thing. And also like I got so deep in the rookie process last year and I loved it, but I ran myself ragged. Like finishing those rookie profiles and then doing like 11 hours of live draft coverage between the 3 shows, right? Including yours, Jesse, like it messed up my sleep schedule for like 2 weeks. I was just so burnt out. And it's like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do my spreadsheet. I'm going to have my notes and that I'm going to have my rankings, whatever. But in the end, listen, there are people who are much better suited to interpret film. There are people who are much better suited to interpret analytics. I can put it in my spreadsheet, but I'm going to let the experts be the experts. And I'll have my take, but I'm not going to be sitting there and, let me get some all 22 on, Rashid Wright. Like I don't know that that's going to be my thing this year. I think I'm just going to be a little bit more laid back with it and go from there. And as far as like player acquisition, it's just going to be like what we were talking about. Like when I look at players and who do I want, who's going to lose a tiebreaker, it's going to be based on things like, what offensive coach are they playing for? What role do they play and that sort of thing. And, so I just want to say this is something I've wanted to do for a long time, was bring 2 people I love together to do a show like this, and it lasted 2 hours because we're fiends. And I'm not big on the holidays or anything like that, but Jesse's going to be taking a break for podcasting in January. I might drop a few Fever episodes, maybe have a guest or 2, but we'll see. But this is the time of year where I do a lot of reflection, not New Year's resolutions or anything like that, not caring about Christmas or gifts or anything like that. I do a little bit of reflection. And I've had a tough 2023. but one of the things that I've been able to do is I think, really place mental health and rest above things that it should be above. And I want everybody out there to the best of your ability to try to do that. As I said on Dynasty Saturday Night Five a while back, the science shows that we need to be resting 42% of the time, and we just don't, And so what I hope for everybody who's watching or listening is that you're able to, as much as your life can allow you, to do more human being and less human doing in 2024. Time for plugs. Jesse, tell us all about Dynasty War Games and where we can find all your jazzy stuff.
Yes, find us on the Dynasty Warzone network. We record now on Tuesday, so we come out later in the week. We're relevant once our episode comes out. We had a weird recording schedule earlier in the year, but we kind of fixed that. Things are going great. Lately, we've just been reviewing Dynasty Warzone Patreon leagues. And then what that does is lead us to discussions of players, right? Is this player a buy? Is this player a sell? What situations and what exactly? What we always do is player evaluations. So we've kind of changed up the format a little bit where we don't always play a game. Like, brain freeze, sorry. We don't always play a game, but we always have a good time. It's not really the happy hour it used to be because I've cut back on my drinking. That probably makes you happy, Brian. It used to derail this podcast in particular.
We had some fun ones. Yeah.
We did, and that's why I kind of stopped doing it. But yeah, find us on the Dynasty Warzone network. We've been coming out on Fridays and Saturdays. We'll be taking January off, but back in full force in February with all of our rookie breakdown. Definitely don't want to miss because we're not going to miss a single play.
Mm-hmm. Josh, plugs or anything else that you want to say. Jesse, I'm sorry. If you wanted to give a message to the audience as we transition not only seasons of fantasy football, seasons of winter and all that, and seasons of, heading into a new year, do you have anything that you want to say?
Yeah, well, I mean, I just want to make sure that everybody approaches this season with the right attitude. It's about being with the people you care about, whether that's family, whether that's friends, whether that's your pets, whoever you have around you. Just make sure you enjoy the time you spend with them. Don't get caught up in the commercialism and just have fun. And if you're not religious, that's great. I'm not religious, but I love Christmas because I get to see people in just a relaxed setting that I care about and that I love spending time with. So just enjoy, create memories, and don't put any pressure on yourself. People aren't expecting from you what you think that they are out of this holiday.
Same to you, Josh. Any final thoughts / plugs?
Yeah, so I'll just start off by saying love you both. I've had a fun time doing this podcast with you, Brian. It's definitely given me a certain release that I usually only get from playing D&D and some other stuff. So it's been nice to have another outlet to get away from the mundane life that I seem to be living this year. So thank you for that. Hopefully I can get on Fever sometime. And everyone, just take care of yourselves. Put yourselves over anything else, honestly. Otherwise, you're not going to be worth the damn. Enjoy the holidays. Just be nice to other people. Be kind. That's really it. For plugs, you can find me on Twitter at Rotonaut, ROTONAUT. And anyone not doing anything tomorrow, I believe it's the Going for Two Christmas party. If you want to come hear Ryan, Gerson, and Courtney get wasted and yell at each other, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, we'll be. I think it'll be live on YouTube for once until we get canceled. So, yeah, see us there. I'm gonna take a load off Brian in the rookie season, do some write-ups. That's all at goingfor2.com with my recently updated Dynasty rankings.
You can find me on Twitter at ffjunkie_. Oh, I'm sorry. What do you want to say?
No, I just the whole D&D thing shook me. It's Josh. Do you consider yourself millennial or Gen Z?
I'm a millennial.
Millennial. Okay, that's one thing I love about you millennials is you took a game that I played when I was a kid and you made it popular again. So if you ever are starting a campaign, don't ask me to start in the middle of a campaign. If you're ever starting a campaign and you need another guy, reach out.
After this, I'll put you in touch with somebody. My DM, he pretty much does DMing for a living, so I'll put you in touch with him. He's really good.
So what's really cool about D&D, and I think it's kind of always been this way, but I think more vocally so lately, is that it's such a statue of liberty. It's just like where all the misfits go to be together and be weird together and be loved. You know, like there's there's a lot of crossover between like D&D and certain marginalized populations like neurodivergent people and the trans community and things like that, where they're like finding like let's be weird together and fucking rock. And I just, you know, I love that about young people. You can find me on Twitter at @ffjunkie_, articles and rankings on goingfor2.com. You can follow Dynasty Fever on Twitter at Dynasty Fever Pod. Again, we'll be dropping a few episodes, but Jesse will be taking a break for January, so I'll probably be taking mostly a break since January. For January. For the Going for Two side, goingfor2.com has all your fantasy needs. In the bottom right, there's a purple Discord thingy, and press on that and join our Discord. There's lots of channels. We have a show for you pretty much every night of the week. If you've made it this far, folks, congratulations and happy I don't know, playoffs 2024 and hot cocoa and slippers and pajamas and dogs and naps and all that stuff. All right. Yep. That's a wrap. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.
Thanks,
Go Irish. Go Irish.
Birds.